Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for attending today. We're letting a few more people trickle in. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. As a reminder, unfortunately, we cannot see you and we cannot hear you. There is no ability for you to talk to us other than the chat feature at the bottom of your screen or the Q&A. So if you do have a question, we will be getting to those questions in a timely manner throughout the presentation. And then if there are any questions that we don't get to today, we'll certainly note those if you do submit those in the Q&A feature. And I know Mr. Guereca will be opening up some time in the middle of the day, which we'll talk a little bit more about in this presentation. And then in addition to that, if we don't get to any of those questions, Aaron will take those questions as we note those down and email those that are asking those. So hopefully that alleviates everybody's situations. It's good to see everyone. We still have some more people that are filtering in, so we're just gonna wait a couple of more minutes. But thank you everybody for attending today. Unfortunately, as everybody knows, we can't be in person, so we're excited that everybody could attend us virtually today. All right, Aaron, this number is starting to slow down. So once again, if you do have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, or if you have a response to something that Aaron has said or may want some clarification, feel free to use the chat feature as well at the bottom. So let's go ahead and get started. My name is Matthew Walker. For those that do not know me, it's excited. I'm sorry I can't see everybody, but it's nice to have you all here. I'm going to be your moderator for this session, and before I turn it over to Mr. Aaron Guereca, I just want to make you aware of that Q&A feature and the chat area as well. If you have a question during that session, please use those, and then I will be monitoring those throughout the session, and we'll bring those up throughout Aaron's presentation. He has some designated slides that we'll go ahead and stop and try to answer some of those questions. And like I mentioned before, if we don't get to any of those questions, there will be kind of a short session for those whose questions didn't get answered, kind of around the noon 12:30 slot time. We'll have some more details given to you in the chat feature as we go along. And if we don't answer your questions there, we'll certainly get back to you via email, as we will have those questions noted down as long as you know them, as long as you note them. Enough of me. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Aaron Guereca. He's the CGA Director of Club and Facilities. Aaron's been with the CWGA and CGA since 2016. He's an Evans Scholar alumni, and when he's not cheering on his Buffs, he is buying his favorite new pair of Jordan sneakers. So, Aaron, feel free to take it away.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, or ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here this morning. Again, my name is Aaron Guereca, and hopefully I have talked to most of you on this call. If not, I look forward to speaking with you in the future. As the slide says here, welcome to this year's 2021 Virtual Women's Summit. I look forward to seeing all of you in the future in person. So without further ado, let's get started, shall we? So today's agenda here, hang on. There we go. It wouldn't be a virtual seminar if something didn't happen there. Okay. So we're going to go on a little bit of a journey through 5 different sections here. The first section we're going to cover is what's new in the GHIN platform, and what's new in terms of the rules of handicapping. And then we're going to get started. We're going to talk about some things you need to know in order to get started as a golfer. Third area we are going to talk about is what to do before your round, or what to know before your round. Again, right after that, following up on before your round, what to know during your round as a golfer. And finally, we are going to round out today's session with what to know and what happens after your round and what happens after you post your score. After each of these sections, we're going to have some certified or verified time to stop and listen to some questions if you have any. We're only going to be able to take a couple due to the time limits that we have. But again, we're going to have some more details about some extra time kind of at the end of today's session or later on today. Okay, so without further ado, let's get right into it. So what's new? Club certification. I want to thank you. And for those of you who are not part of your committee, you need to thank them, give them a round of applause. But without their help, we would not have been able to certify all clubs in 2020. So as of October 15th of last year, all clubs in 2020 were certified. So thank you from the bottom of our heart and the bottom of CGA's heart. Thank you very much for all your work. So what does that mean? That means that there is no need to take the WHS exam this year. So any WHS exam that is taken is essentially for new members who just need to test their knowledge, and or if you really want to take it again, you can, and I can give you those results. All you need to do is send me an email, okay? And so a lot of you may have the question of when will the next time we need to certify, or we will be required to certify? Good question. The next time all clubs will need to recertify is when there is an update to the rules of handicapping, and that'll either be in 2022 or 2023, okay? All right, so with that being said, you don't need to take a test this year, but the one thing we are wanting you, or we do require for 2021, is that you fill out the club information form. If you do not know what that form is, that form will ask you who the handicap chairman is, what their contact information is, who the president is, the name of the club, so on and so forth. A very basic requirement. This way we can send that information to the USGA so they are up to date on the clubs here in Colorado. So it's very easy, no test. Like I said, unless you want me to, I can send you one if you want to test your knowledge. Okay, and so the details on that or where to find it, it's an online form. Just head to coloradogolf.org to complete the form. And if you think you've done it already, please give us a call or send me an email and we can confirm your submission. All right, now the big ticket item. I don't know if you've seen all of our communications to the members as well as the committee members, the digital profile. All right, everybody's favorite topic and the thing that keeps me up at night in my dreams. Just kidding. So beginning this year, all golfers will be required to have a digital profile to use GHIN.com or the GHIN mobile app. Why? Because the USGA is greater in enhancing their online data security, and because of that, there's going to be an extra layer of authentication needed to access your information. And so in order to create a profile, the one thing that everybody needs to have, or the one piece of information that everybody needs to have in their profile on the back end in GHIN, is an email address. And not only just an email address, a unique, specific to that person email address. Because once an email address has been associated to a member and a digital profile is created based on that email, that is then considered taken. All right, and so what does that mean? That means that golfers can no longer share an email address. So why can't we no longer share an email address? So the reason is if two people are sharing an email address, it doesn't consider them unique. So in order to consider one golfer unique, they need to have their own individual email address. And there's a couple different things you can do. You can get a Gmail address. It's very simple. You can get a Yahoo. Lots of these email providers provide email addresses. You just have to go in and set them up. Or there's another workaround that we can talk about later. If you have questions on that, we'd be more than happy to help. Okay. And so those of you who are in Arizona right now or have looked online at GHIN.com and the GHIN mobile app, you may notice the new look here. So when you log on GHIN.com, you will see this screen here on the left. And then if you try to log on your phone, you'll see the screen on your right. On January 22nd of this year, everybody was kicked out of their mobile app, and the mobile app was updated, forcing everybody to log in using a username and password. Okay. So again, I'd be more than happy to help out if you have questions. The one final piece I have to say here, when you're creating a password, it has to be at least 6 digits. Just a little word of advice. A lot of people are using their GHIN number as their password. I may add one more extra digit to that, but that's just kind of a baseline, all right? And then the one good thing now is if you forget your password at any time, your club representative or us here at the CGA can send you a forgot password email, and it's very easy to set a new one, okay? So just add this to the list of passwords you have going in that notebook, all right? So that being said, do we have any questions moving forward, Matthew?
As of right now, I don't have any questions. Just a reminder to attendees, if you do have a question, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And if we don't get to any of those questions, we will be having a session around the lunch hour. I'll send more information in the chat feature. Yeah, but as of right now, you can keep on moving.
All righty. Okay, well, without further ado, like the screen says, welcome again to the World Handicap System. So getting started, what is the piece of information or pieces of information you need to know as a golfer when getting started and becoming a golfer with the CGA? Okay. First piece to know is what is the purpose of the World Handicap System? Okay. The first purpose is for any golfer, regardless of skill, to be able to obtain and maintain a handicap index. Okay. Second is to be able to use that handicap index, not only here in Colorado and the US, but also around the world. And to also be able to use that handicap index to play recreationally and compete against anyone on a fair and equitable basis. And the one kind of big idea behind the WHS is to be more inclusive to golfers. We want any type of golfer, regardless of skill, to be able to come to a golf course and be able to play and keep track of their scores using the GHIN products, okay? And so, again, kind of keeping the big umbrella idea of being more inclusive to all golfers, the minimum amount of scores needed for that initial index is no longer 5 18-hole or 5 9 10 18-hole scores. It is now a total of 54 holes, made up of any combination of 9 or 18-hole rounds. All right. There is no minimum time limit of completing those scores and submitting them, although we do want you, as soon as you play, to post those scores before midnight that day, but we'll touch on that a little bit more later. And it is strongly recommended, in order to better assess a player's playing ability or potential as a golfer, to post those initial scores hole by hole. And kind of on that topic there, we also recommend that you post scores hole by hole in the app, so the technology will work for you instead of you having to work for the technology. Okay, I am getting used to posting scores hole by hole. I've done a few last year, and so I would recommend doing so as well. Okay, and so again, keeping with the theme of being more inclusive to all golfers, if you did not know this, the maximum handicap index for both genders has changed. Prior to last year, it used to be 36.4 for men, 40.4 for women. That was erased with the big eraser, and now it is 54.0 for both genders. It is no longer gender specific. Why? Again, this is to be as inclusive and accessible as possible, and it's to make it as easy as possible for golfers to obtain and maintain a handicap index. Because we still want those higher handicap golfers to be able to see exactly how they're playing throughout the season and over many years. Okay. All right. So that's the purpose here. Now, the one thing you need to know is how to calculate a handicap index. So I get a couple questions still of, I posted a score, 3 scores of 75. How come my, my handicap index isn't 3 over par or 3.0, things like that? Well, a handicap index isn't based off of the scores you shoot. It is based off of the scores you shoot on a tee at a golf course that has a slope and a course rating, okay? Because you need that information to establish what is known as a differential. So your handicap index is actually made up of differentials. And depending on how many differentials you have, that will depend on how many of those scores it takes to create your handicap index. But for most of you who've been playing golf for a little while, of your previous 20 scores, your handicap index is based off of the best 8 or lowest 8 of those differentials. Okay. So for those of you asking and wanting to know, what is a score differential? How is that calculated? Good question. Let's take a look, shall we? All right, the calculation of a score differential. There's going to be some math involved today. Good morning to you too. So this is kind of the first piece here. So the score differential calculation is as follows. 113, those of you asking what 113 is, that is what is known as standard slope. Okay, so it'd be 113 divided by slope of the tees you're playing. You would then take the sum of that little equation there, multiply it by your adjusted gross score, also known as your net double bogey score, minus the course rating of the tees you're playing, with the addition of minus any PCC adjustment. Again, we won't talk about that too much here. We will talk about that kind of later on in the presentation. Okay, and the same formula was actually used prior to the World Handicap System. The only thing different is with the introduction of the WHS, there was the addition of the PCC adjustment. Okay, and that is kind of the USGA's bread and butter. Okay, so here we go here. This is a table from the rules of handicapping. Those of you who passed the test last year should know this quite well. For beginning golfers as well as seasoned golfers, this is what it looks like. So if we take a look at that first line there, a beginning golfer must post at least 54 holes to gain an initial index. But is that really a good indicator of the golfer's potential? No. So what happens when those initial 3 scores are posted? The system will automatically adjust their handicap index or their lowest 1 differential down 2 points. Not to be mean, but in order to protect the field if they were to enter a competition. Now let's take a look down. Again, with more information, the better idea we will have on a player's potential as a golfer. But again, 4 scores is not very much, but the system will automatically decrease that differential by 1 stroke this time. All right. Now, if we look at the third line here, you post your first 5 scores. We will still take the lowest 1 differential from those scores, but look now, there's no adjustment needed for that. Okay. Now, when we post 6 scores, this is where a slight change will happen. Our first 6 scores posted, we will then add another score, or the system will take your 2 lowest scores now, your lowest score differentials, and subtract 1. Again, not to be mean, but in order to protect the field if this individual were to enter a competition. Okay. And again, the more scores posted, the less the system will need to take over to adjust for that golfer's potential. And then again, as we get to 20 scores, the lowest 8 differentials will be taken, and that will be your handicap index. Okay, so let's take a look. So let's say I'm a golfer, and these are my first 4 scores here. This should look very familiar. Those of you who have posted scores and looked at them in GHIN.com or online. So, and then I kind of want to alert you to a couple things here. So on the left-hand side in the gray column, you will see a 76 with a star next to it. If you were to look in your apps right now or GHIN.com, every score that has a star next to it is one of the scores that is included in the calculation of your handicap index. Okay, just for future information. Okay, so if we look at this golfer here, again, if we...
Hey, Aaron. Aaron, can I stop you? You're muted. Not sure what happened.
Oh man,
There we go.
Kick me
You're
off.
on a roll.
Okay, good. Okay, focus. Okay, so of our lowest 4 scores here, based on our table, we will then use our lowest 1 differential, okay, which happens to be our 5.5. All right, but based on the table on the previous slide, what happens when we only have 4 scores? Our differential is reduced by 1, again, not to be mean, but to protect the field in case I were to enter a competition. Because again, 4 scores is not a real telltale sign of what my potential of a golfer is, or potential as a golfer is. So again, so my initial handicap index based on these 4 scores is actually a 4.5 and not a 5.5. Okay. So that being said, are there any questions?
We do have a variety of questions.
Okay.
The first is from Gene Lowry. Thanks for submitting. If a member has been using their shared email address and they now have to change it, is all they need to do is create a new account with a new email address and GHIN number, and all of the info will be in the new account? Or do they need to do anything else to get that information over?
All you need to do is create a new email address, and either the handicap chair or us here at the CGA will be able to delete what was in there, input that new email address, and you don't need to worry about anything else. Everything else will stay the same.
Awesome. The next question is, can they use a GHIN number to log in if they don't have an email address?
No, there is a necessity for an email address to be associated for a GHIN number.
Wonderful. Thank you, Aaron. A couple more questions. Jody, we will have this presentation available after the session. We will be emailing this entire recorded presentation on top of Aaron's PowerPoint, including in the post-event email. So please expect that. We have another question from Sandy that says she has a couple of members who are having trouble with the digital profile. If they played somewhere last year, do they just have to update when they log in for the first time this year? Or if they didn't post last year, is there a place to sign up?
So if they didn't play last year, once they're activated on a GHIN roster of sorts, then the whoever activated them, either us at the CGA or members at the club most likely, or the handicap chairman, they will then have the ability to send that individual or individuals that initial digital profile creation email. But without that email, they will not have the ability to create their digital profile.
Great. We just a couple more questions and we'll keep you moving. What's the difference if I post a score hole by hole or just the total score?
So good question. If you post a hole or a score hole by hole, the math will be done for you, which we'll kind of go over here in a few slides. If you post a total score, you would have to do the math before posting if any holes were to need to be adjusted.
Thank you, Aaron. The next question is, when do last year's members get deactivated in the system?
That is actually up to each club. Some clubs deactivate their members January 1. Some clubs deactivate their members April 1st. So it's kind of everywhere in between there. So it's up to the club. So you'd have to ask your club members. Yeah,
and to add on to that, the inactivation deadline this year is April 15th. So we would like to have rosters. Everybody that hasn't paid should be inactivated by April 15th at the latest. We used to require our members to play to a 40 handicap. If it was higher than a 40 handicap, should we raise it to 54?
You don't need to. Each league is responsible for their league members. So it is up to the league to determine if they want their members to play to a certain handicap index before joining.
Great. And the last question before I keep you moving is, what is the earliest date you can submit a score to be considered for handicap in winter states?
So our activation or score posting start date has always been and will continue moving forward as March 15th. So,
and just so everyone knows, that is a big date. If you're a tournament player, that is when tournament registration's opening. Also, our silent auction that we're promoting ends on that day as well. So that is a big day for the Colorado Golf Association. Other than that, Aaron, we can keep you on moving. Those are all the questions I have at this time.
Okay, let's keep moving and grooving, shall we? So now we have our handicap index, right? So the next thing we need to know is what our course handicap is. All right. Prior to last year, should I say, the course handicap calculation you see on the bottom there is what it used to be. But with the World Handicap System, one of the bigger significant changes is that the rule 3-5 is now gone, and they added it and built it into the initial course handicap equation by adding course rating minus par. Okay, so this is a very important question or a very important equation, as a lot of people like to calculate their own course handicap, and a lot of people like to use the course handicap calculator, which you can find on our website as well if you don't want to calculate it manually. Okay, so that being said, let's kind of take a look at what used to be to what is now. Okay, And it's kind of important to know the difference. Okay, so if we take a look at prior to the rules of handicapping, on the left we have our scratch golfer, and on the right we have our 15.0 golfer. Okay, if we look here, regardless of yardage, take a look at what that scratch golfer's course handicap is. It's a 0 regardless of how far or short the tees are. All right, now let's look at the 15.0 course handicap golfer, or should I say handicap index golfer. Again, regardless of yardage, through 3 sets of tees, this golfer has the exact same course handicap. Interesting. I always wondered about that. Okay, again, just kind of focus your eyes there. All right, now let's just take our scratch golfer, for example, here, and let's juxtapose the two, the old USGA handicap system and now the world handicap system. Again, on the left, we have what used to be, and on the right, we have the addition of course rating minus par, right? So now let's take a look. If we look on the left, again, all tees, this golfer was a 0. If we look on the right, the only tee where this scratch golfer is a 0 is on the white tees. But the further the golfer plays back, the more strokes this golfer will get. And vice versa, the closer this golfer gets to the hole, the less strokes this golfer gets. Okay. All right, now let's take a look at our 15.0 index golfer. On the left, you've seen that before, but then let's take a look. Oh, look at that. Again, the only tee where these two match are those dang white tees. 6,400 yards, okay? And kind of the same pattern can be seen here with this golfer. The further back this golfer plays, the more strokes are needed, and the closer to the hole that this golfer plays, the less strokes are needed. Okay. Now, that being said, one of the things that is very easy to calculate now is what your target score will be. But you need to know what your course handicap is in order to calculate your target score. All right. And all the target score equation is your course handicap plus par. Okay. So once you calculate your course handicap, you can calculate your target score, as I said. And one question that a lot of people have is how often should I play to my handicap? And that the answer to that is about 1 in 5 times, or 20% of the time. But let's take a look at our example here. So we have our target score from the green, white, and silver tees. There's the course ratings and slopes. There's what my course handicap is from each of those tees. Again, you can see the same trend going on. The further back I play, the higher my course handicap is. But let's look at our target scores here. So in order to play to our handicap from each set of tees, this is the score I will need to shoot. Okay, so it's kind of fun to see or to calculate what your target score should be from a set of tees on any given day. Because again, this is just a target score. That doesn't mean you're going to have a good day. It doesn't mean you can't shoot lower than this, and then it doesn't mean you won't have a bad day and shoot higher. It's just based off of math. This is what your target score should be. Okay. All right. So that being said, let's do some more math, shall we? All right. So in this example, our handicap index is 4.5. We are going to be using the green tee information. Course rating 71.0, slope rating 125, and par of 72. Now, for those of you who have written down the course handicap calculation or equation, here's what it looks like. We have our handicap index multiplied by slope of the tees, 125. Divide that by 113 again. Those of you taking notes, that is known as standard slope. Okay. So once you have that, you then take that sum and you add it to the course rating, 71.0, minus par of those tees, 72.0. Okay, don't worry, I did the math here for you. 4.978 plus a negative 1.0. A lot of people I saw last year said, wouldn't this just be plus 1? Actually not. You have to follow the math here. You can't change 72 minus 71 in order to get a positive number. It stays a negative. Okay. So our unrounded total would be 3.978, and that's going to be important here in a second. And you would round that to 4. Okay, so in this case, your course handicap would be a 4, which based on par of the tees being 72, our target score again is just par plus your course handicap. Our target score from those green tees would be a 76. All right. Now, with the WHS, there was an introduction of another term known as a playing handicap. And all a playing handicap is your course handicap multiplied by a handicap allowance if there is any. Most of the time, most leagues don't play by any handicap allowance, so the course handicap equals the playing handicap. But say, for instance, you are playing at some percentage of your total course handicap, like 85, 95%. In this case, we use 85. If we take a look at our guy here, his course handicap is 15. They're playing a tournament format that's only allowing 85% of their course handicap. That means his playing handicap will be 13. So your course handicap and playing handicap in this case is different. Okay. So moving forward here, here's kind of one caveat that I wanted to show everyone. So before last year, what was happening is you would round your course handicap to get a whole number, and then you would multiply that rounded number by a percentage to get the course handicap you were playing to that day. That is essentially the new playing handicap equation. But now it's kind of very minute, but a lot of people missed it, and it had a cause of concern at the beginning of the season last year because a lot of people did not know that in order to calculate your playing handicap, you would actually use the unrounded course handicap number, kind of increasing the accuracy of your course handicap. So if we take our unrounded value that you've seen before, 3.978, multiply that by 0.85. In this case, it's going to come out to 3.381 rounded to a 3. So our our playing handicap would be a 3, but our course handicap would be a 4. Okay. Very minute, but can make a difference. Okay. So now we have our playing handicap for the day. Now you need to know where you get those strokes on your scorecard. Most of the time, hopefully, the league will have scorecards for you, and if they're really nice, they'll even dot them, like our Zoom Country Club did here. I don't know who's played Zoom Country Club before, but it is quite the nice course, 60 degrees every day, perfect. And then the event we're playing today is 2021 Women's Summit, and from here on out, we are going to use Kate Mate, not related to our Kate, but very close. It's almost her sister. And she will be playing Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka. If we take a look on the far right hand under the PH column, again for Kate Mate, who we've been using all along, her playing handicap for the day is 3. And Simone Biles, her playing handicap is 9. And Naomi's, hers is 13. And the one thing or one question I get is, how do we know where the pops go? Well, or the strokes go. If we take a look at the line right above Kate Mate that reads stroke index, it might be a little small for some. So that stroke index line determines or shows the difficulty of the golf course. Usually the front 9 will have all of the odd numbers and the back 9 will have all of the even numbers. It depends on the golf course, but this is usually the trend that we see. So that's why you'll see 1, 3, 5, 7, so on and so forth on the front, and 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, so on and so forth on the back. So if your playing handicap is 3, that means on the 3 hardest holes or the top 3 stroke indexed holes, that is where you're going to get your strokes. So in this case, if we take a look at Kate, holes 3, 7, and 13 are stroke indexed 1, 3, and 2. That is where we are going to get her pops. And then the same can be seen throughout Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka as well. Okay, so it's very important to know where you get those strokes. That being said, are there any questions, Matthew?
Yes, we do have 2 questions. Just for those that may have showed up late, if you have any questions, please utilize the Q&A feature and the chat feature at the bottom to submit those questions, and we'll get to them when Aaron takes a break in his presentation. I do have 2 questions for you at this time. First is from Candy. Currently, you can't add hole-by-hole information to scores posted by leagues through Golf Genius. Is there any discussion by GHIN to allow members to go in and add the hole-by-hole details to a Golf Genius posted score?
That is more of a Golf Genius question, but I can tell you they are working on the ability to be able to go in and edit hole by hole or edit those scores and add stats and things to it. I don't know any timetable or anything other than that.
Great. And the next question I have for you is from Kira. What do we do when the card for the course doesn't indicate those items? I'm assuming it's a slope and rating to calculate my course handicap on the card for the holes I'm playing.
Good question. So we actually have a course handicap calculator on our website, or you can actually calculate your course handicap on your GHIN app. And if you want some more details on how to do that, just give me a call in the office and I can show you.
Great. I do have one more that came in. When we need a playing handicap, will the Pro Shop find the unrounded course handicap, or will Golf Genius do this calculation?
If you use any type of tournament software, that calculation will do it for you. Well, not any type. If you use Golf Genius, that calculation will be done for you, and it is correct.
Great. Let's see. Nope, no more questions. Feel free to move on.
Okay, perfect. So now let's move to the section known as during your round. There's only a couple things you need to know during your round. 1, play well, hit the ball straight. Try to anyway. Okay, and the other 2 are guidelines for most likely score. So what the most likely score is when a player starts but does not complete a hole, the score recorded for handicap purposes is the most likely score. Okay, so one of the things that everybody needs to know about the USGA is they like to leave a little gray area in some places. Okay, this is one of those places. So prior to the rules of handicapping, as soon as somebody picked up, if they were in a team in match play, they were to put down their most likely score. So what does that mean? It could be a 5, it could be a 3, who knows? So the USGA tried to introduce some guidelines to help with this determination. Okay, so if you pick up your ball in match play, and it's on the putting green within 5 feet of the hole, you are to add 1 additional stroke. There's no gray area there. If your ball is between this and this, you add 1 stroke. Okay, but now if your ball is between 5 feet and 20 yards from the hole, you add 2 or 3 additional strokes, depending on the position of the ball, the difficulty of the green, and the ability of the player. And again, if your ball is beyond 20 yards of the hole, we see this gray area here, you add 3 or 4 additional strokes, depending on the position of the ball, the difficulty of the green, and the ability of the player. Okay, everybody loves gray area there. So it's up to you and your playing partners to determine or make that determination, okay? So that's the guidelines for most likely score. And the other thing you need to know while playing is what happens when there is a hole not played. When there is a hole under construction, what do I do? When a player does not play a hole, the score recorded for handicap purposes is net par, also known as par plus. So par plus any handicap strokes that were to be given or taken away on that hole. Okay, very easy. Like I said, on the course, goal is to tee off and get the ball into the hole, least amount of strokes as possible. That being said, any questions, Matthew?
Yeah, we do have one question. I was in the process of typing it out, but since we have time, I'll let you answer it. Can scores from courses played during the winter states, so basically can scores that were played in the off season in winter states that were played in states like California, Arizona, Texas, warm weathered states, can those be posted prior to 315 in order to establish the initial handicap index?
Yes. So actually it is built into the score posting system. If you were to try to post a score before 315 in Colorado, it would actually tell you that it is in its inactive season and you would be unable to do so. Any warm weather state who are still in their active season, you can indeed post those scores to establish that initial handicap index.
All right. And Bev, if we didn't answer that correctly, just feel free to submit another question. Let me know. I have a couple more questions that just came in. Is the adding of 1 stroke for the 5-foot length of putt a requirement or a suggestion?
It is a guideline.
All right. In other words, a suggestion.
Yes.
So this next one's from Cynthia. Is 10 still the highest score that can be recorded on a single hole?
It is not. It is actually, that's going to lead into the next section, and I'll show you why here. So I'll answer that here in a little bit.
Perfect. And I have two more questions, I think one of which you will answer in this next section. For new players, what is the highest they should post on a hole? Players that don't have handicaps, we want to keep up the pace of play.
Okay, well, I actually don't have that on the next, but
Oh.
the highest, if people who are establishing their handicap index, the highest score that they can post for handicap purposes is par +5, I believe. Yes.
On top of the posting out of state in warm weather, I believe it's same for the countries. The countries that you may be able to post year round. I know Mexico, obviously, that you can post year round. Are there any others that you know off the top of your head that you could share?
Off the top of my head, I do not, unfortunately.
And as he mentioned before, if it prevents you from posting that score, then it's probably in an inactive season. The system is set up to either allow you to post those scores if it is an active season, and it'll not allow you if it's not. So another question, last one for now. We play a men's versus women's tournament, 4-ball format. What handicap allowance do you recommend for this? Last year, we didn't use a handicap allowance, and the women beat the men in almost every foursome.
That would be on a case-by-case basis. Recommendations would be determined based off of a table in the rules of handicapping. So I would need to know a little bit more detail in order to make a recommendation. And again, it would have to be agreed upon amongst both players.
Yeah, and Lynn, feel free to reach out to us after if that's something you want to discuss. We can certainly, as Aaron said, on a case-by-case basis, chat about that with you.
Correct.
Well, before we move on, can new players use the most likely score rule?
Can new players use the most likely score rule?
So if they don't have an established handicap index.
Yeah, I believe they can, yes. And it would just be the maximum score they could take on the hole.
All right, feel free to keep on moving. We've got about just over 15 minutes.
Perfect. I think that would be just enough time for some more math, huh? All right, let's do it. So, oops, my apologies here. So, to that question about what the maximum score is. So the maximum score for handicap purposes is net double bogey, which has been kind of understood by some and not understood by a few. And so my goal today is to kind of drive home how to calculate net double bogey, okay? And also another way to think of it. All right, so let's take a look at an example here. So net double bogey is par +2 plus or minus any handicap strokes received or given on a hole. Okay, so but where people get caught up is with the net double bogey. What exactly does that mean? So the way I like to think of net double bogey is double bogey plus. Makes a whole lot more sense. So you take double bogey of the hole plus however many strokes given or received on that given hole. So on the bottom example here, we have a par 4. In order to get to double bogey, that's +2. This gives you 6. And in this case, they receive 1 stroke on that hole. So the maximum score for that hole specifically is 7. So there's no longer, if you have a handicap index of X, the maximum hole score you can get is Y. It is based on the hole and your course handicap and how many pops you were to get per hole. Okay. Which is why it's a whole lot easier to post scores hole by hole versus trying to figure it out yourself, in my opinion anyway. Okay, but that's a very rudimentary example here. So let's take Cape Mate here. All right, Cape Mate, we're only going to use the front 9 scorecard. If this may look familiar to you if you use Golf Genius. Again, 2020 Women's Summit, Zoom Country Club, here we go. She is quite the consistent golfer, huh? She's, no matter what par it is, minus both par 5s, she's shot a 4 today. Okay, but on the first par 5, hole 3, which also happens to be the hardest hole on the course, she just had a bad day there. She hit one out of bounds. She hit a roof. Ooh, it was no good. She actually shot a 9 there. Okay. Oh, and then 444, hole 7, another par 5. It is the second hardest hole on the front 9. Oh man, again, she had to carry some water. She couldn't quite do it. She was getting hungry. She also shot a 9 there. Man. So the score for the tournament that day would be a 46. Again, question I have to you is this score what will be posted to GHIN? The answer to that question is no. This has to be modified first. Okay. Because again, the maximum score that can be posted to GHIN on any one hole is net double bogey. So let's take a look at hole number 3 here, since these are our 2 highest numbers. Hole number 3 is a par 5. So if we take par plus 2, again, double bogey plus, that would give us a 7 as our starting point. And then how many dots does she have on that hole there? She has 1. So 7 plus that 1 dot would give us a maximum score for score posting purposes on that hole of an 8. All right. Oh, very similarly on hole number 7, she also gets a pop here, and it is also a par 5. So our starting point would be 7, 5 plus 2, double bogey, plus that 1 stroke, which would give us a score for score posting purposes as an 8. So there's actually 2 types of scores here. 1, the first score used for the event, and then 2, the 44 that will actually be used for score posting purposes. Again, if you use Golf Genius, if you use GHIN, any of the GHIN products, things like that, this is automatically done for you. Okay, only if you post hole by hole scores. Otherwise, this will need to be calculated before. Okay, so that's Kate Mates. But again, she was a 4.5 handicap index. What happens if your course handicap's between 19 and 36 here? So in this example, our golfer has a course handicap of 27, but we're only going to use the front 9. And in this particular case, they only have 12 strokes, okay, on the front 9. So knowing player A has a course handicap, or should I say has 12 strokes, that automatically means they at least get 1 pop per hole plus an additional 3 in order to get to 12 on the 3 hardest holes, which in this case would be hole 3 being the hardest, hole 7 being the second hardest, and hole 9 being the third hardest based on that stroke index line there. Every scorecard will have this, regardless if it's Golf Genius and or the golf course's scorecard. Okay, so that's important to know. Okay, so now let's look at the adjusted scores here. All right, so player A, the score used for the event, it would be a 68, but now let's determine what this player's score would be posted to GHIN, shall we? Okay, first hole, par 4. This player A gets 1 stroke here. So again, 4 plus 2 gives us a starting point of 6 plus any dot there on hole 1. There's indeed 1 dot, so that means the maximum score for score posting purposes would be a 7. Okay, so let's take a look at hole number 3, or hole number 2, sorry. That's a par 3. Oh, but look here, player A shot a 4. Again, one thing I want you to remember that the original score only needs to be adjusted if it is higher than the maximum allotted score postable to GHIN. If it is not, then you keep it. Okay, so in this case, the maximum score that can be posted to GHIN on hole 2 here is 3 plus 2, 5, plus 1 dot here would be 6. But player A scored a 4, so that does not meet our requirement there, so there is no need for an adjustment. So we keep the 4. Okay, hole 3. Whoa. Again, that hole 3 is tough for everyone today. But man, okay, so we have a par 5 again, but in this case, player A gets 2 strokes on the hardest hole on the golf course. So 5 plus 2 is 7, plus our 2 strokes here would mean that the maximum score postable to GHIN is a 9. Okay, moving forward, hole 4 and 5 is very similar to hole 1, so we're just gonna keep moving. Oh, hole 6 again. It's a par 3, player A parred it, so is there a need to adjust that score? There is not. You keep it. Okay, hole 7, that sneaky second hard par 5, also a 10 here, very similar to hole 3. So our maximum score in this case would be a 9. Again, 5 plus 2 gives you double bogey 7, plus any dots there would be a total of 9. Okay, hole 8 is very similar to hole 1. All right, now we have hole 9 here. This is our difference maker. So hole 9 is a par 4, but I and D, or player A in this case, gets 2 pops. So for those of you who are a little more visual like myself, sometimes I like to see the math drawn out. So we take par of the hole, plus 2 to give us our double bogey plus any pops. And in this case, there's 2 pops. So on this par 4 in particular, our maximum score here is an 8. Okay, so that means our score for the event is a 68, but our maximum score postable to GHIN is a 61. Okay. All right. Oops.
Hey, Aaron, before we go any further, I feel I've got some questions that may be pertinent to the last couple slides.
Okay.
The first one was, what's the difference between for handicap purposes versus most likely or par plus, and when would you use these?
So for handicap purposes is when you're adjusting a hole scores posting to GHIN. And then par plus would be during a round. That's when you would adjust.
All right. The next one is just asking, is this an accurate way of thinking of double bogey plus? I can take as many triple bogeys as my course handicap. If I'm a 1, I can take 1 triple. If I'm a 2, 2, etc. If I'm a 19, I can take all triples and 1 quad. Does that make sense?
It makes sense as long as you remember that the 1 quad would have to be on the stroke index hole of a 1.
All right. And then just some clarification. I think we may have understood it, but just for the double bogey plus, a double bogey for a par 5 is an additional 2. Is that always an additional 2, no matter what the handicap range is?
It is always an additional 2.
Right. And that's it. You can keep on moving.
Perfect. All right. So I know I'm running low on time here, so I just kind of wanted to show you an additional course handicap example here, but kind of take away a lot of the math since we've done it already a lot. But I just wanted to avert your eyes to hole 3 and 7. Again, the reason being those are the 2 hardest holes on the front 9 here. But player B scores a 12 on hole 3. Oops. Whoa. Yikes. And a 12 on hole 7. Okay. So I just wanted to show you what the adjustment would be with 3 pops on this hole. So again, 5 plus 2, 7, which gets you to double bogey, plus any pops on the hole, which in this case would be 3. So 7 plus 3, the maximum score on hole 3 would be 10. For, again, score posting purposes, not for the event. Okay, hole 7, par 5. The second hardest hole, this player B gets 3 pops on this one as well, which means that this is very similar to hole 3. So you take your par plus 2, which gets you to double bogey, plus any pops on the hole. Again, this player gets 3 pops, which means our maximum score for score posting purposes is 10. So if we do all this math, our score posted, or our maximum score that would be postable to GHIN would be 66. Again, we don't know what the player scored on any of the other holes, but if it's anything higher than the maximum score, it would need to be adjusted for score posting, but would not need to be adjusted for the event. Okay, so there's always 2 scores pretty much. Most of the time, they do not need to be adjusted and they are the same thing, but it, you know, this way the system accounts for you having a bad hole or holes. Okay, it's not going to hurt your handicap index having 1 or 2 bad holes because it'll be adjusted for you. Okay. All right, so now we have our score, our adjusted score, and we have it ready to go. So what does that mean? We want to post that score on the same day after we play, as soon as possible before midnight. So our score can be used for the PCC adjustment, and our score will then be updated at midnight that night. Okay. Again, like I said, it's to ensure that if it is indeed a bad day out there, the course is playing tough, the weather was terrible, there was snow everywhere, bad conditions, that is to ensure that your score, as well as the others who play there, will meet the minimum amount of players needed to get a playing conditions calculation adjustment. And again, as always, if the handicap index does not represent the ability of the player, they can take it to the committee, and the committee can provide peer review and make that determination. Okay. But now, once our score is posted, let's let the calculations begin. The first calculation that happens right at midnight before your handicap index is adjusted is the PCC, or the playing conditions calculation. Okay. It is designed to be conservative in nature and will be adjusted in integer values, meaning -1, 0, for the most part, 1, or +1, +2, or +3. Okay. It is only performed once a day. It considers all acceptable scores submitted at a golf course that has a rated T for genders, regardless of gender. It requires at least 8 acceptable scores from individuals who have a 36.0 handicap index or less. I guess my 42 handicap index doesn't meet that requirement, unfortunately. Bummer. I'm gonna get there one day, though. I'm gonna get there. Okay. And this, if there is a PCC adjustment, if you remember our differential equation, the PCC is only applied to the differential and not to the score. So you won't see your score go down from 86 to an 84 or 86 to an 89. You won't see that happen. Okay. And it includes both 9-hole and 18-hole acceptable scores. And the one question I get is, do we know exactly the math behind the PCC? And the answer to that question is, I do not. And nor I don't think I ever will. That's kind of the USGA's bread and butter, and they like to keep it to themselves, which makes the GHIN handicap index very unique and the bread and butter of the USGA and GHIN. Okay. So what happens when you post your score and your round was exceptional? So if your score differential is 7 strokes or better than your handicap index at the time you post, you will see an ESR adjustment. So there's 2 different types here. If your score differential is between 7 and 9.9 strokes lower than your handicap index, you will see an ESR adjustment of a -1, not only to that score, but to the previous 19 scores as well, giving your handicap index the net adjustment of 1 stroke. Okay. Now, if your score differential or the score differential relative to your index is 10 strokes or lower, you will see an ESR adjustment of 2 to not only that score, but to the previous 19 scores, giving you a net adjustment of -2 strokes to your handicap index. Okay, so that's one of the safety measures that the new WHS and GHIN has. And the second one is the cap procedure, soft cap, hard cap. I don't know about you, but I have a soft cap as well because I'm not playing as well as I used to. But you can think of the soft cap and hard cap as a hurdle and a wall. In order to get to the wall, you have to get over the hurdle. So the soft cap as your hurdle or suppression mechanism, that once your current handicap index increases to 3 or more strokes over your low handicap index, which you can always see in your GHIN app or GHIN.com, the system will automatically suppress your handicap index from going up too fast or too quickly. But as soon as your current handicap index gets to 5 strokes higher than your low handicap index, your handicap index will be restricted and unable to move any higher unless the committee decides that you've had an injury or needs to modify it for some reason for 365 days. Okay, so if you want to know more about this stuff, I have a whole FAQ section on our website that you can visit, and that's coloradogolf.org/World Handicap System. Hang on, Matt, 2 seconds. And if this wasn't torture enough, I do have some upcoming WHS/GHIN seminars here. They are available to be attended right now. You just have to go to our website. The first one's Wednesday, March 17th. They're all going to be an hour and a half because me personally, I find it hard to sit on a webinar more than an hour and a half and actually retain all of that information. So please feel free to join me for that. I'll go over in depth how to do an ESR adjustment, what soft cap, hard cap actually looks like, and I'll go into a couple other topics a little bit more deeply as well. Okay. So don't go.
All right.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I do have to wrap up the session. We are going to have some more time. I just put in a Zoom link into the chat feature. For those of you that didn't get your questions answered, I do have 3 questions that we didn't get to. So if you are able to join us at 12 o'clock p.m. today, like I said, I just put the Zoom link for that session in the chat feature. It is not on the Reg Fox within the Women's Summit. So I will go ahead and note those 3 questions down, and we will address those at the 12 o'clock hour. And if we don't see you then, please email us and we'd be sure to get those questions answered. But at this time, please feel free to join our Rules of Golf session. Thank you so much for joining. And thank you, Aaron, for providing a wonderful session and educating our members on the World Handicap System.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a great rest of your Saturday and enjoy the sunshine.
Take care, everyone. Aaron, I'm just going to keep this open and note these 4 questions because I think if I end this meeting, these 4 questions will get deleted.
Can you explain what a differential is? They missed our first part. Find charts, find the charts for reference. Can our stats be exported to Excel? Okay, good questions. All right. Cool.
Yeah, you're good to go, man. I'm just going to note these questions. All the attendees that are still on, unfortunately, we aren't going over any more information. I'm just making sure I note any questions. If you'd like to submit any additional questions for that 12 o'clock session, feel free to do so now, and I'll be sure to get those over to Aaron that he can address them then. Oh, looks like. I apologize if I accidentally sent the link to just us panelists. So if you're still waiting for that link, it is there. If you don't see it, feel free to email one of us and we'll make sure we get you access to that session.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. That was great.
Yeah, I stumbled a couple times, but not too bad.
No, you're good. That was great.
How'd you like the slide-in? I practiced that.
Chris Collinsworth-esque.
Yes, that was my goal. All right.
Yeah, I'm getting some more questions to come in. So if you want to hang on, you can. If not, no big deal.
Hang on here a second.
Okay.
All right, what questions do we get? Or are we getting?
Where can they find the charts for reference? I know a lot of those are in the golf shops. If they're the charts I'm thinking of.
Hi, Susan. Hi, Wendy. Charlotte asked.
To get to the next session, you're going to go ahead and leave this one and head back to the Reg Fox area that has the session schedule where you can go ahead and click into that next Zoom link. And if you're having issues with Reg Fox, we have made all of this information available on our website on the Women's Summit page, where you can just click in directly to the Zoom links if Reg Fox is giving you issues.
I just closed my door, so I'm still here.
Margaret, unfortunately, this session is going to end. I'm just noting down all the questions, and then once I end this session, you'll be kicked out of this Zoom chat. The next session is in a different Zoom link, unfortunately. So this is not the Rules of Golf session. Nicole, let me go ahead and throw the link in for the rules session for you. So that way you can just go ahead and hop in directly. I apologize for if there was miscommunication.
Oh,
Give me 1 second. All right, if you're still having issues getting into the rules of golf, I found out you just need to refresh your browser in order to get access to that link, is what I've been told. So Laura, if you're still having those issues, Aaron told me to refresh the browser, and that's the way we're troubleshooting that. And Nicole, I apologize. I'm going to send you that link right now.
I think Nicole's in my Zoom room.
Yes, I will put the link in right now. Just give me 1 second. I apologize, everybody.
Also, hi, Laura. Thank you.
Let me know if that works for you, Laura. That's the one that's on our website.
Laura, very same setup, just a little different. All right, let me hop in my Zoom room, Matt, so I can get Nicole out of there, but I'll copy this link. And that's the
Okay.
link to the rules of golf, right?
The one I just put in there, yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, man. Thank you. Nice
All
job.
right, yeah, thank you, Aaron.
Oops.